We need two things to survive as a species. The first one is attachment. We will literally die unless we physically and emotionally attach to another human being. The second thing we need is authenticity, the pursuit of who we really are and what we are meant to be and express and how we are meant to express ourselves in this world. Now, because of the overwhelming fear all of us experience as a child, as a result of the moments when our parents were perfectly imperfect and they hurt us and left wounds in us, all of us immediately develop shame. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about stage 3 in the worst day cycle, shame. Now this is video 4 in the 5-part series on reclaiming your authentic self by becoming trauma informed. Please go to my playlist, the worst day cycle playlist. Catch up on the other ones because you'll want that information to pull all of this together. But today we're going to focus on the shame piece. Now, what's critical to understand about shame is it is all about control. Because as a child, when our parents are perfectly imperfect and they leave wounds in us, we are too young to process our parents' and society's perfect imperfections. We don't have the emotional mastery development. We don't have the cognitive development. We are under-equipped to handle the overwhelming nature of these less than perfect and traumatic moments. And so, because of that, we all experience the feelings of being unworthy, impotent, inadequate, dumb, dysfunctional, imperfect. We feel neglected and abandoned. And to survive all of that, we then create a false persona, a false identity to hide those feelings from ourselves. And here's the proof of it. Think of it. In those moments when your parents were scolding you, telling you how bad you were, what did you decide in that moment? Uh-oh, who I am isn't right. I need to adjust because remember what we need, attachment. So if we don't physically and emotionally attach to our parents, we will develop belief system, thoughts, feelings, anything we can to get our parents' love. Now, those of you who go, you're a rebel. Well, even as the rebel, you are developing something that gets their attention. It's still attachment, even if it's negative, even if they're scolding you nonstop. What you have found is a negative, what's called negative control. You're using disorder and dysfunction and anger and fights to create attachment because, think of it, we only argue and try and discipline those that we care about. If we don't care about you and you're unruly, we just go, who cares? Doesn't matter. And so even the child that is the black sheep of the family has just found a different way of attaching. And it works. I get their attention. Now, do you see what we have to give up to do that? Our authentic self. It is the day we die. As our soul gets suppressed and repressed. It has to for the sake of attachment. All right? Now, when we lose this experience, this loss of the authentic self, what happens in all of us, and this is how the worst day cycle starts permeating everyone's life, we then use those feelings of unworthiness in a self-sabotaging way to relive them, basically re-victimizing ourselves. We relive them against ourselves, while at the same time placing responsibility on all the other people, places, and things. We become professional victims, basically. I know that's tough to hear, and bear with me, I'll prove it to you. All of us do this. And we do that because we don't know how to give back the shame that was placed in us, not only by our parents, but also by society. And why is that? Because our parents won't accept responsibility for placing that shame inside of us. And why won't they accept responsibility? Because society condones that they don't take ownership of it. And why does society condone that parents not take ownership of it? Because we are all ashamed. We were all shamed in childhood. It is now a societal precept that we all play the victim. We all place responsibility. We don't want responsibility because who doesn't have responsibility in life? A child. And so that's why society, we're all re-victim, we're all just children, placing blame and responsibility on other people, places, and things just like a child would do. That's the societal model. And that's why we let parents off the hook, we let ourselves off the hook. That's why cancel culture, that's why all of this whole victim culture of placing blame on everybody else. We are all stuck as the ashamed child in the worst day cycle, re-victimizing ourselves and placing responsibility on everybody else. I'm going to walk you through it on how that happens. Now, as John Bradshaw puts it, when we go through this shaming within ourselves, he describes it this way. This is just gets at the heart. I wish I could come up with words like this, and that's why I'm reading some of this stuff. These are people who've been able to take what I've discovered and what I show and put it in a way that just is so much more profound than the words I choose, all right? He says it this way: the wounded inner child contaminates intimacy in relationships because he has no sense of his authentic self. The greatest wound a child can receive is the rejection of his authentic self. When a parent cannot affirm his child's feelings, needs, and desires, he rejects that child's authentic self. Then a false self must be set up. That's all of us. A shamed person is divided within himself and must create a false cover-up to hide his sense of being flawed and defective. You cannot offer yourself to another person if you do not know who you really are. I'm going to get to this. I'm going to show you how none of us know who we really are. Toxically shamed people tend to become more and more stagnant as life goes on. They live in a guarded, secretive, and defensive way. They try to be more than human. They become perfect and controlling, or less than human, losing interest in life and relationships, or stagnating in some sort of addictive behavior. A shame-based person will guard against exposing their inner self to others, but more significantly, he or she will guard against exposing himself to himself. This is all of us. Think of why you don't want to share your history with others. You don't want to share it with yourself. That's not to shame you. I don't blame you. And so those people who, when I use my life story to talk about how all of this stuff works, they think it's awful. Well, did you hear what I just read? Only a shamed person would think that's awful. And they think it's terrible that I bring up my ex-wife and she's not here to defend herself. Well, if and when my ex-wife ever decides to do the recovery work, she'll just go, oh yeah, he's right, it's the best I could do. We were both perfectly imperfect. And look, yeah, Kenny's right. He did a lot of terrible things to me too. Like we would share in the misadventures of our perfect, imperfect nature. But those that are toxically ashamed don't want anyone to know about it, don't like it when other people talk about it because it exposes that then they'd have to see themselves. And so they chastise me, but they're talking to themselves. It's not even about me. Their dislike of it is a dislike for themselves. Bradshaw goes on. This voice that is within us that's saying we shouldn't do this and this is bad is mostly created by the shame-based shut down defenses of the primary caregivers, and I'm adding society. Just as the shame-based parents in society cannot accept their own weaknesses, their own wants, feelings, vulnerability, and dependency needs, they cannot accept their children's neediness, feelings, weakness, vulnerability, and dependency. Think of what parents do. Stop it! You got, that's why they're angry. I can't. You guys want too much. That voice is the result of the parents/society's deeply repressed desire to destroy the aliveness and spontaneity of the child whenever he or she intrudes on the parents or society's defenses. So again, people jumping on me, society, victim culture, all of this. That's all these little kids and parents. That's what all of it is shame-based. Their anger toward their shaming parents or society could not be expressed for fear of losing the parent or their place in the world. That anger is then turned inward and becomes self-hatred. That's where the self-victimization will come. I'll show it to you in a little bit here. The parents' societies defenses against their pain and shame prevent these feelings from erupting into consciousness, false self, false persona. We can't consciously admit all these truths, that this is the childhood we all went through and this is how we're all reliving it. If the parent/society were to let the child express those feelings, it would threaten their own defenses. The parent/society must stop the child's feelings of neediness and pain so that the parent and society don't have to feel their own feelings of neediness and pain. And so those who reject what I say, those who don't want to go down this road, those in victim culture, those in cancel culture, all of that is the inner child in the adult, in society, saying, don't talk about parenting, quit blaming parenting, all these different things. And it's not blame, as I talked about in the previous videos. It's just truth. It's just responsibility. So all the people that push back against me, like Bradshaw, do you see how beautifully he says it? I couldn't say it this well and succinctly. That's why I had to read, it's like, there, that's what's happening. We're in massive denial and massive shame as a culture and society, as parents. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to deal with it. And so we push, we repress, we get angry, and we're all filled with this self-hatred, self-loathing. So remember, shame is about control. So I have to control what you say, what you do, who you are, and all of this stuff. That's the victimizing nature of this, is I got to control you because I can't control me, because society, my parents say I can't let that inner child in me express their thoughts and feelings and their pain. We're not allowed to do that in our culture. That's why I do all this. I'm trying to change that. So, to survive that, we create as he said, we create a false persona, a false self. But it's detrimental. Now, as he talks about, the most paradoxical aspect of shame is that it is the core motivator of the superachieved and the underachieved. So, most successful, least successful. Nobody's immune from it. All the people you're trying to emulate, they're just as perfectly imperfect if you feel like you're down here. The star and the scapegoat, the righteous and the wretched, the powerful and the pathetic. This is where, when he's talking about the powerful, the right or the star, the superachieved, these people as a result of their shame have fallen into the trap of what's called a falsely empowered codependent. Yet our society says, oh no, they've got it together. They figured it out. They weren't shamed as a child. Oh yes, they were. They were massively shamed. And here's how he talks about it. The distorted thinking can be reduced of the falsely empowered codependent to the belief of this: I'll be okay if I drink, eat, have sex, get more money, work harder, etc. The shame turns a person into a human doing, not a human being. So the superachieved, the so-called successful, they chase all of that because, look I have the accolades, I've made it, I'm not filled with shame. Oh yes you are. You're a human doing, not a human being. And as Alice Miller says it beautifully, when she talks about the successful person, the contempt for others that lies within the grandiose successful people always includes disrespect for their own true selves, as their scorn of the less fortunate, less accomplished implies, because this is their interior dialogue. Without these superior qualities of mine, a person is completely worthless. This means further that without these achievements, without these gifts, I could never be loved and would never have even been loved. That's at the heart of the most successful. Now think about it. Think about Donald Trump. incredibly successful, whether you like him or not. But what could Trump not admit? That he was ever wrong. Why? Do you know his childhood? Horrifically abused. His father told him he'd amount to nothing, that only his brother had worth, and his brother died of, I think it was alcohol addiction, killed himself through alcohol. So Trump's whole MO was, I will become a super achiever just to prove I'll do more than my father. I'll even take over his company and move into Manhattan because my father didn't believe he could do it. So he went and did all of these things. And so Trump can't admit he's wrong, ever. It's the death, because underneath, without these achievements, I could never be loved by my father and never would have been loved. I brought this up in the last video, Michael Jordan. He broke down crying in that 10-part series because he can't get the world to love him. His father didn't love him. His father told him all day, every day, how he'd amount to nothing. Well, now the world's upset with him because he treated his players that way. And so instead of being praised for being the best over, he's being scorned for his treatment of others. He's going, damn it, I did everything I could to get attention, and look, I'm the best ever, and you still won't love me. Do you see the self-victimization of Trump? And it's not just Trump. You look, Bernie Sanders does this too. You know, he hates the wealthy. Yet when asked, you know, in his political campaign, it's hysterical. He wants everyone to get more money, a higher minimum wage, but he wants $15 an hour, and he was only paying his workers $13 an hour. And so they all revolted. And so you know what he did? He cut their hours, which is what businesses say. If you raise the minimum wage, we can't afford it. We'll lower their hours. And that's exactly what Bernie did. Like, he's fighting for all these so-called socialist principles, and yet he doesn't believe in them. They're all self-victimizing. Everyone does this. Nobody's immune. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, black lives, blue lives, white lives, dog, cat, doesn't matter. It's all the same. And that's why I say the most successful are the most broken, because they have the trappings of success and our culture protects them. Remember I said this isn't just a parental problem. This is a societal problem. This shame is, the society is ashamed. We are all shame-based creatures. And so we can't see, you know, look at who sets the policies in our world. It's the most successful. And so you wonder, you know, you're sitting here going, this is wrong, wrong, wrong. Well, who sets it? So-called the brightest, smartest, the ones who haven't been through childhood trauma. It's baloney. They're just as traumatized as all of us. The difference is we as a society won't call it out. We won't say what it is. And so even us down here go, I want that. It's just the polar opposite of what you're experiencing. And so another way that as a society we avoid all of this and we stay in the falsely empowered is we have learned to avoid emotional mastery to keep our shame alive. We do that through cognitive addictions, like Bradshaw even points out. Neuroscience has shown that we feel before we ever think. Every thought and every action starts from a feeling. They've proven it in experiments, yet we all denounce feelings. And so what we've created is this culture that's filled with cognitive addictions. Most self-help is about trying to change the way you think. Well, it's a complete waste of time. You can't change your thoughts until you can change your feelings. And so he points out, cognitive addictions are a powerful way to avoid feelings. As he said, he lived in his head for years. He was a university professor. Thinking can be a way to avoid feelings. All addictions, whatever they may be, success, living in squalor, they all have a thinking component. It's called obsession. Obsession is a feeling state. It's a shame-based state. This also leads to the disempowered codependent. Shame is a two-headed monster, falsely empowered, the rich and famous, disempowered, the victimized, who search it out and replay it upon themselves. Well, both sides do it, but our society looks at this as the victim. They're both victims. They just do it differently. These are the disempowered codependents, the so-called nice people. all right? And this is what you have to be careful with a lot of political parties. They want to be nice, but they're just hiding their shame because, as Bradshaw points out, the goal of the nice person is his own image, not the other person. Being nice is primarily a way of manipulating people in situations because by doing so, they avoid any real emotional contact and intimacy. By avoiding intimacy, the nice person can assure that no one will see them as they truly are, shame-based, flawed, and defective. I prefer the term perfectly imperfect, not defective. I read about this in my book, the chapter, The Day I Saw My Darkness. I thought I was this nice guy. None of us are. We do things from, and the proof of that is, have you ever been resentful that somebody didn't recognize your niceness? We all have, especially the nice people. The nice people get the most upset at how nobody recognizes how nice they are. Well, that's what he's saying. Being nice is primarily a way of manipulating people and situations. Do you see what we can do? Now I can control you by blaming you, people, places, and things for how you're not recognizing how nice I am and not rewarding me for it. It's manipulative. The only way it's truly nice is if you don't keep score, you don't throw it in their face, and you don't have resentment. Well, we've all been raised by this ashamed society that says, like I said, a lot of political parties and a lot of social causes are about doing things that are making us nice. They're not. They're about controlling, manipulating people so that they don't have to experience their feelings. But they're not in reality about that. The false self is running things. And so I had to admit that a lot of the nice things I do aren't nice. The thing to recognize is that unconditional love and acceptance of self seems to be the hardest tasks for all of humankind, Bradshaw says. Refusing to accept our real selves, which is our imperfections. That's what I'm bringing to light here, is all of our imperfections. Man, this is uncomfortable. But if we want our real selves, we all have to take ownership and learn to love and accept our perfect imperfections. Because we refuse to accept our real selves, our perfectly imperfect selves, we try to create more powerful false selves, or we give up and become less than human. This results in a lifetime of cover-up and secrecy. The secrecy and hiding is the basic cause of all human suffering. And this creates what I call the disparity of love. Everybody wants to be loved at this level. Yet we all feel our self-esteem is at this level because we're all hiding. We all have perfect imperfections. We're all filled with shame. Every parent hurt us. We hurt our children as parents. We don't want to admit that as a society or as a person. So do you see, if I can't admit truth of who I am and I can't love myself, I made some mistakes. I'd like to do better and I'm going to keep working on it, but it doesn't mean I'm a bad person. So because that's what this person can do. This is the love we want. But if I'm here in what we're talking about is self-love. Someone with self-love can own, share, laugh at their perfect imperfections. They don't need to overachieve. They don't need to underachieve. They don't need to be overly nice. They don't need to control and manipulate. But since we are all here, we can't get this love. We're only capable of this, and therefore we will only accept this. And the proof of that is look at your relationships. Have you received this? No. Very few of us, if any of us, have. Not because we're not worthy of it, but because our shame and low self-esteem means we only attract this. We have to confront our worst day cycle. We have to heal the pain from our past. We have to admit we are ashamed as a culture and society, that our parenting dynamic instills that in us, that we then protect as a society and go, oh, don't talk about the past, don't deal with childhood. We have this false, well, okay, you can choose that and you can stay here if that's what you want. And so then, you know, what you're going to do is you're going to buy into political parties and political movements and social causes to try and control and bring people down to you. That's what you're going to do. You're going to try and strip them of their power and anything they like or anything to come down here with you. That's what shame does. It strips everyone and everything. It's about control and power and saying, you, people, places, and things need to be different so that I can feel okay. That's a shamed-based person. A love-based person goes, it looks like you're hurting to me. It looks like you want to control and tell me how to live my life and what I should think and believe. I love you. I'll let you do that. I'm not going to join you in that. I'll let you suffer the consequences of choosing that, but I'm not going to enable you. I'll let you take responsibility that you're choosing to victimize yourself that way. I love you enough to do that. Like, I don't need false power or false niceness to come down here and drag you out of that. You're choosing it. Like, I'm sharing with you truth and how to get out of it. If you don't want to get out of it and you want to stay here, that's fine. I'll let you. That's love. Well, if you want this kind of love, you need to be able to have that kind of truth with yourself. And to do that, we must all face the worst day cycle and face the shame that we're all stuck in. So what's the solution? 4 steps. Become an expert in the worst day cycle. Heal the pain from your past. You do that by developing emotional mastery. It's number 3. And when you have that, you can love and accept your perfect imperfections. You can share them openly with others. You can laugh at. You remember the first video I did was talking about perfect imperfections. Being able to let it roll off our back. That's how we do it. So I'm going to help you start becoming an expert in reclaiming your authentic self, developing emotional mastery, learning to love and accept your perfect imperfections, and heal the pain from the past by showing you how shame works and how to discover it in yourself. Remember, we need 2 things. We need attachment and authenticity. Now, because as a child, in those moments when our parents were perfectly imperfect and they hurt us, in that moment, we learn denial. All right, now we're really going to get in the last video, we'll get into denial. Some of this, I'll be honest with you, some of this you're going to feel a little bit left hanging because without the information on denial, you can't bring it all together. Okay, but I just have to do it that way. All right. But do you see, in that moment, we learned self-deception and denial. We had to go, wait a minute, mom and dad aren't perfect. We couldn't admit that they weren't perfect. We also realized there are rules in this house, and they're all based on making sure mom and dad aren't upset. Because if mom and dad are upset, we're in trouble, and I get sent the message, I am worth less. There's something defective in me, because that's what was sent to them, and it's what gets passed down, all right? So we learn in that moment to repress those feelings of hurt, sadness, pain, everything. We learn to minimize. Oh, this isn't that big a deal. Well, getting slapped, spanked, hit, no, and being yelled at, Kenny, it made me tough. You're just asking every kid to get a trophy. Like, these are all, we condone, we justify all the mistreatment. So any person listening right now who's trying to say, I don't have pain from my past, I don't have anything from my childhood, and that my current adult problems have nothing to do with childhood, that is a person who's so detached from reality, who's so filled with shame. They have so much repressed trauma. They have minimized, condoned, and justified their parents' mistreatment. That tells me how critical and how scary it was to survive in their house. How it was absolutely not okay for them to be their authentic selves. Not because their parents are bad people, but because that's what was done to their parents and they're just doing what they know, and society and everything is condoning it. Everyone's doing the best they can with the information that they have at the time. Again, this isn't to blame. It's to help and bring everyone into reality so parents can take ownership. Most parents listening go, oh my God, I had no idea I was hurting my kids this way. It's true. Most people don't. Just take ownership of it and go, wow, this is great. No wonder my kids don't like me. No wonder everything ends in a fight. They're hurt. I never knew that my perfect imperfections were so profound. You get connection. Isn't that what we all want? That's what truth gives, connection. Now, because of that, because we had to suppress and all of that, we had no choice to do that. Our survival depended on it. Second thing happens here. In that moment, we develop a false persona to create attachment. We develop feelings, thoughts, and beliefs about ourselves and about the world to protect our parents and society, but ultimately ourselves. We recognize, remember, that what's it take to survive as a species? We need attachment. We do all of this because inherently we know we will die without it. So it's a defense mechanism. It doesn't make you bad. But this also means we don't know who we are. And I know everyone thinks they do. But when you do the work on the cycle, you realize, oh my God, he was right. I didn't know. I thought this was who I was and what I believed. It's not. It's not. Okay? Now, as a result of developing this false persona, the way we learn to suppress it and condone it and minimize all of this is we develop mantras to survive this trauma. We also use, to survive the trauma, survive the denial and the loss of our authentic self. What people don't realize is, now these mantras are things, like for me it was, oh, what's the point? Like when my dad would flat out lie. And I'd want to defend myself. I go, oh, what's the point? He's not going to listen anyway. You know, and think of all this self. Here's what you want to listen to yourself is when you make a mistake, listen to how you belittle yourself. We all do it, even from the rich to the poor. We all have some sort of consistent language we use that denigrates ourselves. Like one of the things I do is I go, oh, Kenneth. Whenever I was in trouble, the only time I ever heard my full name was when I was in trouble. My dad would yell, Kenneth! Even to this day, someone calls me Kenneth, I'm like, ugh. I'll politely say, could you not call me Kenneth? I prefer Ken or Kenny, but I actually like Kenny the most. I don't like hearing Kenneth. I still have trauma around that. It's the only time I ever heard it was I was in trouble with my dad. What are your mantras? Now this is important because this shows you what you use to suppress and condone. Take on your parents' shame, take on society's shame, stuff it inside of you, belittle yourself with it, and now this is the false persona. Because when Kenneth comes in, I went, oh, not okay to be Kenneth, and I developed thoughts, feelings, and beliefs to survive it. See, this is what's beautiful about our pain and our shame is all of these things we're creating, what we don't realize, and I'm going to get to how this works. Everything we do, we're using it to show us how everything I'm saying is true. It's all true. Like you won't be able to run away from it. And I'm not smiling. Like here I go again, I'm smiling. When I'm talking about something incredibly difficult, overwhelming, heartbreaking, sad, but you can see the joy I get from it because once I figured all this out, I was free. I was free of my parents' shame, society's shame, all of this stuff. We develop these mantras because they are the window into how we heal. They are going to show us how to forgive ourselves, how to forgive our parents, how to forgive our society, and get our life back. The fourth thing we do is we all self-victimize. I know this one's going to be tough, but think about it. What happens in a riot? We're mad at the police, we're mad at the government, and what do? We destroy our own neighborhoods. We destroy ourselves. Think about it. All the riots that have been going on, and they're fighting for black rights, and they're destroying black neighborhoods. They're not going over to, destroy, the people they're angry at, the white people or whoever it may be. They destroy themselves. Like I'm laughing. It's a serious thing. I shouldn't laugh at it. But I'm laughing at how obvious it is. That's what I'm laughing at is, again, it's that sense of, God, how did we not see this earlier? What happens in a divorce? You feel rejected, abandoned, neglected, and so what do? You immediately start drinking and sleeping around. You're looking for outside approval, but what do you feel inside? Terrible at how you're giving yourself away. You victimize yourself to try and get your power back. Destroy yourself. What about our health? What happens when you get sick or hurt? Everybody comes to your defense, right? You get total control. We'd love to be sick and hurt. Everyone says, oh, I don't want to get. No, there's no advantage to not being sick or hurt. That's why that's why our population, as we develop more and more medically, our population is getting sicker and sicker because the worst day cycle is we're getting more ashamed. And so we're screaming, will somebody help me heal all of this? So we keep getting sicker and sicker. That's why we pick relationships. Look at every one of your relationships. You're going to see they mirror what you went through in childhood. I'm going to give you an example of that in a minute. What about your career? Your career tells me how you were shamed as a child. A real estate agent moved a lot as a child, or there was some sort of chaos around the home because what's the process of buying and selling a home? Pure chaos. What about anyone in sales, car sales, computer sales, whatever it is? They were told directly or indirectly through words or actions that they had no worth. Because what happens in sales? It doesn't matter how much I sell. I could sell $1 billion today. Tomorrow I start at zero, no worth. They're just reliving their pain and trauma against themselves. Again, I'll give you another example. Everything we do, it's all we're ever doing. Every choice we make, we're re-victimizing ourselves. The process of recovery is learning, wait a minute, it's like I had to discover about golf. The act of golf, the swinging of the club was just like a brother of mine who physically beat the living hell out of me. I would go into pure trauma swinging. Walking on the golf course was healing. See, in every one of these self-victimizing pursuits, there is an element of health. What we've never been taught is how to discern that. That's what this whole emotional mastery, everything teaches you, is how to learn that. Okay? So everything we're doing, every choice we're making is just like living in a 3D movie, all right? But it's like watching one without the glasses. You know what that's like, right? You can't really make out the images. Everything's distorted because we don't have the glasses. Well, learning about the worst day cycle, developing emotional mastery gives you the glasses. When you learn everything I'm teaching in here, you'll look at every choice you've ever made and it'll all become clear. Oh my God, that's why I married that one. That's why I picked that career. That's why I'm doing everything. It's just all from childhood, nothing else. Your hobbies, the food you like, the colors you wear, all of it. It's all childhood based, okay? The fifth thing that's part of this shame piece is it's an inability to claim responsibility. Now, why do we play the victim and place responsibility on everybody else, cancel culture, all of this? Do you see what it gives us? We get to stay the child. We get someone else to take care of us. Whether that's society, whether that's a friend, whether that's a relationship, we place that responsibility because we were neglected and abandoned when our parents shamed us, perfectly, imperfectly. They didn't mean to, but they did. So we're all asking society and everyone else to parent us. Well, do you see, if I'm always requiring you to fix my problem, I'm never an adult. I'm never my authentic self. I have no power. All of these positions place you in control of whether I'm happy or not. That's why when people say, you shouldn't say these words about people, that's codependence. You get to decide whether something hurts you or not. And the proof of that is, what happens when someone compliments you? What do most people do? Ooh, oh, yeah, I don't want to hear it. Well, wait a minute. I thought nice words were what we all wanted, but you can't accept a compliment. That's the proof. We all choose how we feel about the things we hear. There's a racist word that starts with an N. If a person of that color says it to someone in that color, it's a compliment. But if another person of a different color says it, it's the worst thing you can say. That's proof again. We choose how we feel about that information. I'm not condoning it, but it's the truth. But we self-victimize. I don't want to take responsibility of I'm choosing that word hurts me. Now, I'm not saying and see, so immediately what's going to happen is people's shame and stuff from the past is going to come up and they're going to just stick, like I'm tearing away their ability to play the victim. It is true that many people throughout life have been treated poorly. But in each moment, we get to decide. As my counselor taught me, you can be walking down the street, minding your own business, you get shot by a sniper. It's not your fault. Getting called a word isn't your fault. Being treated poorly isn't your fault. But you are responsible for walking down that street. It didn't happen in a vacuum. Now you have a choice. This information has come at you. This treatment has come at me. You get to decide, are you going to lay on the concrete, bleeding out, screaming at everybody, oh my God, this is awful. I didn't deserve this. Somebody please help me. Or worse, many people won't even do that. They'll just lay there and bleed out and blame, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault, it's their fault. They won't do anything. Well, no, it's our responsibility. I got shot in the leg. I can still get up. I can crawl to the emergency room. I can ask for help. Maybe someone will help me. Maybe they won't. It's still my responsibility to go to the hospital, get the bullet removed, and it doesn't end there. Then I need to go to recovery, hire a professional to help me heal the wound. I'm responsible for that. I'm responsible for why did I walk down that street? I'm responsible at all times for whether I give other people's words power. I give other people's actions power, other people's beliefs. A shame-based person won't take responsibility, and they want you to fix it for them. That's why we are a society that is ashamed. We are moving more and more demanding that other people heal our wounds. That is purgatory. Look at the world. Is it working? It just gets worse. It never works because we are the child laying on the concrete screaming for someone to heal us. They can't. Only we can. Now, I'm going to tell you a story of how all of this works because a lot of those are concepts and it's tough to keep track of. So I'm going to tell you a section of my life story so you can see how the ashamed person and ashamed society would tell you the story. Then I'm going to tell you of what the truth is when you have emotional mastery, when you've conquered your worst day cycle, when you have healed the pain from the past and loved your perfect imperfections. And you've moved out of shame, out of denial, out of fear, okay? I used to tell my life story this way, that I was married for 10 years to a woman who cut me off from my family, who we only had 12 instances of intimacy in 10 years, and an instance of intimacy would be any type of kind words, physical touch, or any type of intimate act. I will say. 12 in 10 years. The last one was 2.5 years before we divorced. I was standing by the front door getting ready to go to dinner, and she says, your rear end, it's not what she said, but your rear end looks good in those jeans. That was the last instance of intimacy. She was also physically and verbally abusive. All right, now I used to tell the story, I gave up my family. Oh, that's right. I was playing pro hockey at the time, and she asked me to quit because she didn't think our relationship would stay together. So I used to, when I first left, before I learned how all of this works, and I was shame-based, I would tell everyone, can you believe it? I gave up my family. I gave up my dream career. I gave up an intimate life. And for all of that, I was physically and verbally abused. Isn't that how most people? That's the person laying on the sidewalk who's been shot by the sniper. Look, I'm this nice guy. Look at all I gave up. I was loving and kind. And yeah, sure, I made mistakes, but no one deserves that. I didn't deserve to be treated that way. She's a narcissist. She's, I had all these names for her and everything. Isn't how most people just turn on the TV, Real Housewives, Kardashians, everything, your own life. That's how everyone describes things. Bunch of baloney. Bunch of baloney. Here's the truth. When you do this work, you realize, wait a minute. Why did I pick somebody, see the responsibility, I allowed somebody in my life who would place the option of you can choose your family or your career or me. Sounding a lot different, isn't it? Hear the responsibility in that? Why did I pick that person? Why did I say yes to that? I can date, we can all date thousands of people. Yet I said yes to this person. Well, when you do the recovery work, you realize I was in my mid-20s playing pro hockey, still living at home. I was the emotional support for both my parents. It's called enmeshment. Severely codependent, covert sexual abuse with my mother. These really twisted dynamics. I couldn't get out. I couldn't leave. I was emotionally intertwined, sickly with my parents. So I picked somebody subconsciously. We don't do any of this conscious. This is how the cycle works. We're re-victimizing ourselves. Remember, 3D movie, choosing things, trying to show us, Kenny, will you heal the pain from the past? Love your perfect imperfections. Develop emotional mastery. But no one's taught us this is how it works. So I picked her. Why? So I could get out of the house. And I could do what? I could play the victim and blame her. See it? What about hockey? Well, I realized I never wanted to play hockey. I have a newspaper article from over 30 years ago when my brother had just turned pro. He'd signed with the Islanders, and a couple years later I was about to turn pro. At the top of it says, sibling rivalry developed, or ice proficiency developed from sibling rivalry, something like that. And the first two paragraphs talk about how my brother and I used to fight for power, and he'd beat the living heck out of me. Like I'd throw, like it was brutal. All right? And so we're just joking around like everyone does about sibling rivalry. Well, this is abusive stuff that we call sibling rivalry. Not because he's bad. That tells you how bad his childhood was, that he was angry enough. Like, I don't blame him. He's just trying to exercise his demons from my parents' perfect imperfections. And I'm smaller, so of course he's, it's going to go downhill. So he's not to blame. He's hurting too. The second paragraph talks about how when my older brother used to force me into the net while playing street hockey and shoot frozen tennis balls at my head, Kenny figured something out. Here's the 3D movie, Self-victimization. He realized when he stopped his brother's shots, it would tick him off. I never wanted to play pro hockey. I was just reliving my trauma, trying to get back at my older brother. 3D movie. It's all we're ever doing. Picking things. I didn't want to play hockey. I just wanted to survive. All right? So now I pick somebody, and look, I got to play the victim. Oh, I gave up hockey for her. What about the physical intimacy aspect? Well, because of my mom's covert sexual abuse of constantly walking in, finding her passed out on the floor with no clothes on, the day I found her naked on the toilet, the way she would leer at me, how I was her favorite, and she'd look at me as though I was hot. That's covert. It's not direct. It's overt is what most of you think about. These are covert things. Your parents walk around naked. That's covert. Parents, sexual language, all these things, those are covert types of abuse. Well, that's what my mom did. So because of all that, I couldn't, when I was younger, I was an alcoholic. I'd quit drinking. Now that I was sober, I couldn't be intimate. So I picked somebody who wasn't capable of it either because of her own childhood history. And what else could I do? Play the victim and point the finger at her. I could blame her for us not being physically intimate. Now, what about the physical and verbal abuse? Well, remember my father, Kenneth? I could never be right, ever. I could never be right with her. And every time I tried to prove that I was right, I'd get just chastised, belittled, just like my father. My older brother beat the living heck out of me. And so, why did I pick someone just like that? Because it's all I knew. I was filled with shame, with perfect imperfections. I was raised in a way, and all of you, it's the same thing. If you've been with a narcissist, whatever it is. Now, I know this is very difficult to hear and very difficult to absorb. It was for me, and this takes time. My videos, like my book, is a book you need to read 3 to 5 times a year for 5 to 10 years. I know there are sentences in there that you will never see because of how the shame and denial portion work. You'll never admit them to yourselves until you get further along in the journey. That's why journey's in the title. It should have been your journey to yourself, not your journey to success. It took me, I don't know how long this process will take you to admit these truths, but I can sit with anyone and break your life down just like this. Everyone's doing it. I don't care how successful or unsuccessful you are. This is everybody. We all do this. We all pick careers. We all pick relationships to show us our perfect imperfections, what we need to heal, and ultimately what we need to forgive. See, my ex-wife isn't the problem. I adore her. Do you see what she taught me? I don't condone her behavior, and I don't condone if you were abused or hurt in any way. But thank God for my ex-wife. She co-signed on my manipulative BS. Now, she chose not to do the work to heal. I did. I chose to do the work. And so now I have truth. And see, so that my second marriage, I moved up. There was kindness in my second marriage because I developed, I moved past more shame. And now I'm ready for something more up here. That's what the process gives you. But you have to make the choice to do that work. So, a couple more things. This is going to be very difficult to admit because of the loss of self that we all experienced in these moments. And so, do you see what I'm asking you to confront? That you're not really who you think you are. And that, I know you're going, come on, Kenny, that's baloney. But if you do the work, you'll see it. But also, you created this false persona to create connection, so you're going to resist it. You're going to deny it, because then it's like, well, wait a minute. If you were present enough to recognize, even if you were present enough to recognize your parents were less than perfect, you're going, but Kenny, if I confront this, I became all of this to connect to my parents. Don't make me, then I've got nothing if I confront all this. And that's the denial aspect. That's what we're going to get to next. I told you, these two videos are really deep, and they're the crux of everything. That's what we're coming to. But I want to kind of end with this. What is healthy shame? Healthy shame is the permission to be human. This is, again, Bradshaw. To be human is to be essentially limited. It is to be finite, needy, and prone to mistakes. Healthy shame lets us know that we are not God and that we truly need help. Do you think those falsely empowered so-called rich? No, they can't admit this. The successful we all want to be. We will know, this is mine, we will know we have recovered when we can laugh at ourselves. Laugh at our perfect imperfections. Share them openly with others, and we don't take ourselves so seriously. And that's why I do all this, is to model. This is what it looks like when you're able to confront your shame. You're able to confront your denial and your parents' perfect imperfections and love them. Love them and love yourself. Okay? If you want to begin that process, you can begin that by taking my free emotional mastery class, Your Journey to Emotional Mastery. You can just go to www.thegreatnessyou.com to do that. If you want to take it a step further, buy my book, Your Journey to Success. It goes in more detail of how this cycle works and how to begin the process. Now, if you really want to dig into this shame stuff and start healing all of this, then you'll have to make a bigger investment. I would suggest that you purchase my masterclass, The Complete Journey to Creating Lasting Love and Connection. It'll give you the journey books and the videos to walk you through so you can start seeing all of this. Please be kind and patient with yourself. This stuff is not easy to absorb, admit, and grasp right away. That's why most people, it takes them 1 to 3 years before they'll ever start listening to me. Most won't follow me or like me or anything. I am an acquired taste because I'm asking you to confront things that are not easy. And but I promise you, if you choose to do this, everything you've been looking for in life, by avoiding all of this, you'll get it. It's the only way I've found. And it's been true for every client I've ever worked with, every person I've ever worked with that pursues this path. They get the freedom they're looking for. If you think this will help somebody, please share it. Leave me your comments. And man, especially on the shame and denial portion, go slow, take your time, and remind yourself each and every day, I'm on the journey. Just enjoy where I am right now.